What do you mean about branding?
Business sells products and services. That needs an identity. And that identity is what I call a brand.
What are the real key reasons that a business owner listening to this should go, yes, this is
Yeah.
what I need to solve in my business?
You need to have solid brand foundations. A business sells a product and service. A brand is way bigger than that.
Yes, most people focus on a logo and a website, and I just want to be very clear to everyone, that is not branding.
I've had calls where they're really stressing about the color palette. And I'm like, have you even thought about your purpose and your mission? And that's the kind of thing you really need to be thinking about. Everyone that is offering similar products and services are also giving similar outcomes. So really, what is it that makes me different? Who are you as a brand?
Hello and welcome to another Business Insider Secrets podcast. Like always, I'm incredibly excited about this guest. This guest is someone I met a few years ago, and I've been following their content on LinkedIn with much enjoyment. It's something that's occasionally hit home and got me right in the gut when I'm thinking about it. She's an award-winning certified brand strategist, a qualified coach, and a speaker. She guides growth stage business owners and aligns and awakens their possibilities. Specializes in working with aspiring legacy leaders, visionaries who feel deep calling to create meaningful impact. Today, we're going to be focusing on this brand specific piece. I want to talk about branding. I want to understand branding. I want to learn from an expert. And Aarti is exactly that, an expert. Aarti, welcome. What do you mean about branding then?
Hi, thank you. Thank you so much for having me here. Great question. And before I go into what do I mean about branding, or what does branding actually mean? I wanna take it a couple of steps back, and let's
Nice.
actually go to the word brand, because
Yes.
brand is different from branding, and people have a different understanding of it, and sometimes they put it all into one. But there is a distinction between the two. So I'm going to give my version of what brand is, and it's very, very simple, because being in this industry space,
Yep.
you hear lots of different definitions, and more complex ones and more deeper ones, and all sorts of different ones. So I'm going to keep it very simple. Business, as we know it, sells products and services, right?
Yep.
Now, that business needs an identity. And that identity is what I call a brand. Because ultimately it's a business that transacts, and it's the brand that attracts. So the brand is the identity for the business and the people that are representing that business.
Hmm.
So that's it in its very sort of simplistic form. I do have other definitions for brand, which I can, I'll go into later. And then the branding is what's going to carry the message of that identity, what the brand stands for, what we want to be known for, um, what's its, what the values, its actions, its behaviors, all of that kind of things. It's all its beliefs that then gets taken into the branding piece, which is then creating a visual identity that matches that brand, the energy of it, the essence, the ethos, all of that side of it. The branding piece is also, the messaging, the imagery, the photography that's used. Some, even have music and that side of things as well. So that's just a quick distinction between brand and branding.
Nice. I love it. So I want to make sure I understand that. So what we're talking about is the brand is the company's identity.
Yes.
Branding is the message that it's trying to deliver to the outer world. And you talked about transaction and attract there, and presumably transactional is the brand, it's the logo or whatever else comes with it. But the attraction is the branding and the message.
Okay, no, I am gonna. So the transaction, the business does the transaction, right?
Okay.
It's
Yes.
the brand that attracts people to the products and services, to the people, that kind of thing. So in terms of, let's go back into brand, that consists of a few different things. So, the ethos, the essence, the communication of how the brand communicates, the people that are representing the brand. So this is the personal brands, the people
Yep.
behind the brand, the imagery, the style. So, this is the logo, the visual identity, that side of things. Andy, I've been into a fair few boardrooms where, when it's much easier when I can show this as a visual, and I'll show, I bring up all the different elements that
Yep.
create, that attracts, is part of the attraction for brand. And when I put up the imagery that's in style, they're like, oh, we've only really been concentrating on that part, the visual identity and what it looks like, and the fonts and the colors, and that side of things. I'm like, that's a part of it, but it's not the whole part of it. We also need to think about the brand promise and the experience. So all of these different elements is
Mm.
what attracts, and then it's the business that transacts.
Nice. So, and presumably most businesses fall into that category where they think they're doing it, but they're just doing a small selection of it. It's like a little bit of knowledge is dangerous.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly that. You only know what you know, right?
Yeah.
And when I say that, I'm also coming from a place when I first started my business. Honestly, I had no idea what brand strategy was. And, I started off as a graphic designer. So yeah, you only know what you know. So I am actually really empathetic and compassionate, because from what we generally understand, oh, it's about, let's just get the website up and running, and let's just go in and do some marketing and create some visibility and awareness. But the dangerous thing with that is that you can get all excited and enthused and go out there and and just put out your products and services and be a very, what I would call, a product-led business or a
Yeah.
sales-led business. And then what can happen with that is that you end up hitting a bit of a brick wall, or you end up going round in circles, because really, then start realizing, oh, there's loads of other people doing what I'm doing. I
Yeah.
don't really have a distinctive edge or a competitive advantage, or I don't really have depth and meaning. Everyone that is offering similar products and services are
Mm.
also giving similar outcomes, transformational outcomes. So
Yeah.
really, what is it that makes me different? So
Interestingly, I had I was having breakfast with a friend who's got a business today, and we were talking about his business and where he's up to, and for a long time they struggled to get past the first million, and they realized, and I'd spoken to him in the past about this, it was about churn. They were struggling with high churn. It's an agency. Agencies typically struggle with churn. And I said, how's the churn situation? He said, so much better. And the reason he gave wasn't exactly what you just said, but it was, we started loving our customers. We started enjoying the customer journey. We started focusing on the customer journey. Our staff started believing in the customer journey. Coming back to exactly what you were saying there, maybe not in the same sentiment or exactly that, but they started focusing on the ethos of the business and the culture within the business and the value proposition that they
exactly.
had in the brand, but they weren't living.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the outcome
Yeah.
of when you get clear on your brand and really take ownership of it, and have that inner alignment first and foremost, because that knock-on effect is like, your team are like, oh my goodness, I want to be part of this journey. I want to be part of that mission. I want to be part of that purpose, that vision. I love those values. Those really resonate with me. I've got
Yeah.
no problem delivering and talking about that, and that being part and parcel of who shows up online or
Mm.
in meetings and that kind of thing, because ultimately it's human beings that are representing the brand. And if it's
Yeah.
not resonating with your own internal team, and the top level of management, the founders, and then the top level of management, where it does have a top and down approach, then how are the team meant to get on board and understand what they're working towards? Because
100%.
it's got to be more than a paycheck.
Amazing. So if brand and branding, you split those out and everything else, why should business owners think this is important? What's the, because let me give a bit of context to that. There's so many things that a business can be doing. And there's so many things that move the needle. Like, why is this so important? What are the real key reasons that a business owner listening to this should go, yes, this is
Yeah.
what I need to solve in my business, right? Or this is why it's important.
Yeah. I'm going to give two things here, two key things. One is, just want to give an analogy of, for example, if you're building a house from scratch, you want to make sure your foundations are really solid and strong. So no matter which way, how high, this way, whatever you build on top is always going to be
Yeah.
solid and strong. Because we know what happens if you don't have solid foundations,
Yeah.
it's going to topple over at some point, right?
Yes.
The same applies for a business. You need to have
Mm.
solid brand foundations. The mistake a lot of business owners make is they go past the solid brand foundations because it's so exciting, right? When you've got an idea and you know you can solve a problem and you're like, right, I want to go and let everybody know and do my marketing. Let me go and decorate the room. Let me go and put all the furniture in, I don't know, in the kitchen and, make sure that there is a swimming pool and, make it look nice. But guess what? When you start then doing all of that, but your foundations aren't quite strong enough, and then it could, it could topple.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's just an analogy. In a business related form, it informs everything
Mm.
that you do as a business. If your brand strategy is done well and you've got those foundations, you understand your mission, vision, purpose, all of those things, the brand values, positioning, who you're actually wanting to serve and work with and attract, you understand the kind of experience that you want your audiences to have,
Yeah.
that will then inform everything you do,
Mm.
every single touch point, every single marketing initiative. That will inform, from your ads to even how you create your product, and your packaging. If a product business, it will inform, your service and how you want to be seen and known. It will inform your content.
Yes.
It will inform how big and expansive you want to get, because
Yeah.
like I said, a business sells a product and service, but brand is way bigger than that. And the way I see it, it's a vehicle to serve, grow, and impact. And therefore, it has infinite possibilities.
Nice. I like that serve, grow, and impact
Mm.
piece you just mentioned. I think that's really powerful. I remember in one business I was in many, many years ago, this was before I sort of had businesses. I used to call them the branding police, because the branding police would you try and do something and the branding police will turn up and say you can't do that because it's against the branding guidelines. I'm like, oh, it's not until I come full circle and our business is are probably bigger than those now, but
Mm,
you then come back to that reality and go, now I see the power of keeping that same thing, right? Because
absolutely. Yep.
the police, just the branding police, have got a job to do.
Yeah.
Like, that's what they're there for. The
Yeah.
guidelines, which is what you was alluding to there, need to keep it all together so that it's not, so it's working, so it's consistent.
Yeah. I was just going to say that you've just hit the nail on the head.
Mm,
Consistency, right?
mm,
We are already bombarded with so much digitally, offline. We're visually, we're also seeing a lot.
yep.
So consistency also in the visual identity aspect is one thing, but also consistency in what it is that you stand for, how you communicate that, representing that, and
Mm,
making sure that you're banging the drum about the same thing
yep.
over and over and over again. Because again,
Mm,
I see a lot of business owners, they're like, oh, but I've talked about that before and I didn't get many, I didn't get much result. And then they move on to the next thing and next thing and next thing. And before you know it, you're like, I don't know what they stand for. I mean, I don't really know what they do.
yep.
And
So true.
actually, what we've got to think about if we really want to have a business, a brand with longevity, it's
Mm,
consistency. In fact, I'd just like to quickly share a
yeah.
story that's just come to mind. I was in a room with on a Zoom room with Daniel Priestley, and this was at that same time when Stephen Bartlett had got in touch with him to get on his podcast for the first time.
Yep.
Everyone was like, how did you do it? How did you do it? Kind of thing. And he actually shared that Stephen's team went and researched him, and part of getting him on, and I'm assuming it's probably everyone that he gets on
Same for
the
everyone.
podcast, they do the research to see how consistently they have been going on about that same thing, talking about it, that authority leadership, do they really know their stuff, or are they jumping from subject to topic to subject to different industry spaces, so it's really important. Sometimes, we feel like, oh, we're saying the same thing over and over and over and over, but actually that over and over again is building credibility, reputation. You're evidencing, you are the experts in this field or area.
100%. Nice. So if that's why people, it's important, why should, let me rephrase that. At what point should people start taking this seriously and really start thinking, okay, branding is where we want to go? And obviously from day one would be perfect, but most people don't do that from day one. All right, yeah, well, let me rephrase that again. Yes, most people focus on a logo and a website, and I just want to be very clear to everyone, that is not branding. But actually, I have a bit of a bugbear on the whole logo thing, where people spend more time on their logo at the beginning than they do going and getting the first sale. And quite honestly, they should be focusing on the first sale, not the logo.
100%.
That's just a personal thing for me. But at what point should people start really taking this seriously? Really start thinking, okay, we've got a business that's got something here. What point should we go, right, we've got to really think about our branding and make sure that it's on point and it's here from now going forwards?
Yeah, I think it's as soon as you know that you have got something that solves a problem, that you want to serve a particular type of audience, you're more than likely there's going to be other people other competitors doing that same. So you've got to be thinking about, well, if I want to be the obvious choice, I want to be the go-to person, I need to think about this, because this is more than selling products and services, because there is a whole load of other people that, and especially, we've got Google, we've got ChatGPT, we've got LinkedIn. People can go in and search for, brand consultants, brand strategists, and thousands of people will come up.
Yeah.
Now we've got to really pretty much immediately start thinking about, well, actually, how do I differentiate myself? How do I help my particular target audience that I want to serve? And I'm using these words very specifically. I want to serve, help them choose me. How do I become that obvious choice? And this is where brand strategy actually comes in, because that deeper understanding and that clarity will allow you to get focused and prioritize your own marketing efforts, which rooms you are stepping into, go networking, what podcasts you're getting onto, what stages you want to be on, who you serve. But coming back to your point of, but you must also know that, you have something that can solve a problem, or, you can help somebody with some sort of transformational outcome, or you have a great product that works. Do all of that research and make sure that it's all working, and, evolve it as if you need to, all of that kind of thing. And then, definitely, start really building on your foundations. Well, getting clear on your foundation so you can build from there.
So typically business owners you see that are getting wrong, what's the top couple of things they do that's constantly they typically do wrong?
Yeah, so you've already hit one of them. It's that, I want to get my website and my logo done. And, I've had calls where they're really stressing about, the color palette, I just don't, I'm finding it really difficult to, and I'm like, have you even thought about your purpose and your mission? And that's the kind of thing you really need to be spending time and effort, thinking about. Because that's gonna, then all of what comes out of, understanding your brand foundations, that will inform your visual identities. So one is that, the website and that kind of thing. And in fact, today I had a call with a particular client, and they said, and this happened before I came into their radar. They already had engaged a web developer, a web designer, web agency, sorry. And we ran a workshop for them Today, they said, actually, we're putting the website on hold because we've realized we've gone few steps ahead when we don't even know what we're going to be briefing that web developer on, content that's actually going to help with the user journey, the customer experience, because initially I was just like, look, I go onto your website, I take away this logo. This could be anybody's website. I don't feel any essence, depth, presence, personality.
Yeah.
It's just very sales and product led. And
Mm.
so are your other 20 competitors.
Yeah. Nice.
So the positioning was off.
So how did you come about to you essentially being an expert in branding, right? And how did that come about? Where was the moment that it like twigged for you? What was that sort of moment?
Yeah. Okay. So as I mentioned to you, I started off my business as a graphic designer. So I was the one like, right, let's get your logo and stuff. And I used to do a little bit of like, right, okay, let's get a bit of an understanding about your brand. But honestly, at that point, I still didn't understand or really know of brand strategy.
Yeah.
Whilst I was running my business, I was going into different rooms and like trying to find that magic bullet. I'm like, something's missing. Not quite sure what it is. Let me go to that workshop, that masterclass, that. Still, and then I accidentally came across coaching. Um, and in that, I attended this 2 3-day event, and where I had an epiphany moment of like,
Mm.
oh my goodness, this needs to be part of my life and this needs to be part of my clients' lives.
Mm.
Because we need that inner alignment first and foremost about what we even stand for and what our values and how that's going to then project and how we're going to represent externally in that
Yep.
sense. And during that time I started to do some brand courses, and then
Okay.
eventually I became a certified brand strategist. And that's where I had this moment of like, actually, I don't want to do the design, the logo, and all of that. So this felt a lot more for me,
Mm.
much more important, much more fulfilling, to be able to allow people to have ownership and inner alignment for much more effective and impactful outer expression. Not
Mm.
only for the individual, if you're a one person business, but even when you've got a team,
Yep.
the transformations I've seen and the aha moments of like, oh my goodness, I've been running my business, completely the wrong way and stuff. I've been hiring and I didn't even have any values. I was just hiring on a job role. Now, we have a team that actually are enthused to be here. There's much more team cohesion.
Mm.
We have a purpose, a mission, a vision that everyone is bought into and loves, and that kind of thing. So that for me was probably that key moment of like,
Mm.
right, this is what I want to be doing, because I know what it feels like to, you know, not feel sort of worthy and not recognize your own worth. So when I can
Yep.
help others do that, to recognize their own worth and own their value, that's the other thing. When we start looking at USP and value proposition, the number of times, Andy, where people will just be like, yeah, but that's just what I do, it's I'm just good at that. Yeah, it's just what I do. And I'm like, oh my goodness, that is your secret sauce. That's what we
Yep.
need to be hanging your hat on. And because we're sitting inside the jar, we don't see the label outside of the jar,
No.
right? So it's just like, that's your thing. So
That
yeah.
when people are so entranced on the inside working of the business, they can't step outside and see it from that perspective. It's just impossible.
Yeah.
And I mean, a big thing we do is working with clients to extract themselves as the business owner out of the business. And
Mhm.
they just can't see those things because they're so entwined in the day-to-day operation that
Yeah.
branding is a great example of, oh, that's something we can do another day. There's so many things like that that could just be put off because the business owner's so involved in doing the invoicing, making the sales, or doing the delivery, or whatever it happens to be. They're so entwined in those pieces. So
Yeah.
the business just doesn't work without them. And because the business doesn't work without them, they can't step out and see it working in those ways
Yeah.
because they can't. You talk to a typical business owner and say, what's the structure, what's the pathway your clients go through, and they just don't know. Yet, say
Mhm.
to them, well, how does the client find you? what is it you provide as a solution? And they're like, and all of a sudden, there it is. Like, it's
Mhm.
you just can't think like that. So it's interesting you say that as well. So who is the sort of the first client you sort of worked with that gave you the big, like, I'm onto something here?
Well, that's a really good question. So I've been in business for quite a number of years now. Okay, so one of them would be a non-executive director for a board for an enterprise agency. And at that time, I was still doing design, and I'd come into doing some brand courses, and I was doing my qualification as a coach as well.
Yep.
And I had the opportunity to pitch to them, and I thought, "Ooh, I can, put all of these things together, get them into a workshop, the whole board and that kind of." I had to pitch for it just because I sit on the board. I didn't just get, here you go, it's yours kind of thing. Um, and just putting all of those different skill sets together and bringing them into the boardroom and seeing the conversations that were unpacking and unfolding, and the clarity that was being had, and I was just like, "Ooh, this is good. I'm onto something," And then we had a website team come in, and we was able to brief them and say, "Right, this is the positioning. This is how we want to be known. This is what we want to be seen for, and this is our bigger vision here." And the whole board was on board, that kind of
Yeah.
thing. So to see all that buy-in happening, that I would say was probably one of the a key moments. And then I've had few different ones with different size businesses. I worked with a coaching organization in New York. They found me via LinkedIn, my
Nice.
newsletter, and all of that kind of thing. And this is, again, now that's the personal branding piece and purposefully positioning yourself. And because I know my brand foundations, I know how to position myself and to
Yes.
whom, and which then therefore comes back to your brand attracts.
Yeah.
But that too was pretty awesome to be found from a coaching organization in New
Mhm.
York,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
them to say, "Actually, we've been watching you." And I'm like, "We've got loads of brand strategists in New York." I was just, why me kind of thing. "I
Yep.
love your energy. We love your newsletters, the content that you put out there, all of those kind of things." And this comes back to consistency. I've been talking about brand strategy, personal branding, some mindfulness stuff and all of that kind of thing, being a conscious leader, and different areas which still come back to what my area of expertise.
Nice. Oh, and what would you say, for brands that implement this, what's sort of the biggest ROI? What's the biggest sort of, you know, because some things are really hard to measure. And,
Yeah.
like it's like marketing. I spend £10,000 on marketing, and 50% of it works. The problem is I just don't know which 50%. Um,
Yeah.
you know, so for people thinking, okay, yeah, I do need to get this on point. What are sort of some of your clients? What are sort of the big wins they've had? What's been the not necessarily, it doesn't have to be financial, right? I mean, most people think financial, but
Yeah. Yeah.
what are those sort of big wins they've had?
Yeah. And the way I like to see that and also manage my clients' expectations, because I, similar questions before, there is the intangibles and the tangibles.
Yeah.
So, one of the intangibles is how they are left feeling.
Mm,
When I say that, I have, on inquiry calls, I'll have business owners come in and they'll be like, "Don't go to my website. It's just absolutely rubbish. I just don't know how to even talk about my services. I'll go into a networking room, and sometimes I'm just like, why am I even here? Does it really land what I'm talking about?" That's the kind of
yeah.
energy, that sort of, slouch, that feeling. After working with me, what has come about is, "Artie, I went into that networking room and people were actually listening, and they had more questions. They wanted to learn more about what I
Yes.
was doing. They want to open the door. I've managed to get on this stage. I've been invited onto this podcast."
Mm,
That is like an intangible, but yet it goes then into a tangible win because now they've been invited onto a podcast, a stage. What does that do? That then creates awareness, visibility. What does
yep.
that do? That then, starts leading to inquiry calls, people purchasing from them, all of those kind of things. So that's one of the big wins. It's how you feel about your brand, because now you've got a different understanding and a belief and that inner alignment, because you can go and aesthetically get beautiful websites done, but if there's no
Yep.
substance
Yep.
and depth and understanding and a meaningful direction to what it is that you're doing and why, and the impact and the influence and the income, it can just feel mentally exhausting and just like, where am I heading with all of this and that kind of thing. So
That
that's one of
burnout.
the things, yeah, which then leads to burnout. Whereas when you're in that state of alignment, aliveness, put me into any room, get me onto any podcast, because I know what I represent, I know what I'm working towards, I know what I want to stand for, the impact I want to make in other people's lives because of my brand, because of the products and services I sell. That is that not
Yeah.
in a bad, that's priceless. That's
Yeah.
actually really, really priceless. So that's one thing. I've had people say I'm now able to, because I know my value and I know how to now lean into it and have more conscious conversations around it. So that's just something I teach my clients to do once we've gone through all the brand strategy and understanding their brand narrative, how to have conscious conversations
Yep.
that lands with people in a networking room, on an inquiry call, all of that kind of thing, which then results in closing deals, inquiries way quicker than they have done before, getting more high ticket clients, getting approached by bigger businesses, um, being more sought out in that sense. So I've had, a client who was just like, Artie, I've had 5 inquiries in this was just in November, and she was just like, usually it'll take me a few months. By the end of November, all were closed, and money in the bank. So there is that income, because energetically, again, you're believing in who you are, what you're doing, you're taking ownership of your own strengths and what you can bring to the table and how you get to serve
Love
others with your own expertise.
Yeah, I like that. I like that the serving, the expertise. It's about. I'm going to use the word legacy there, right? But it's about the legacy of what it stands for, not just the impact it's going to have. Okay, nice. Now let's get to sort of some meat, because everyone's like, okay, I've heard all about this branding. How am I going to do it? Like, what does that actually mean? And how could I learn something to be able to go, okay, what's going to do? So I know you've got a 3C process. So give us the overview of the 3Cs.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's the brand marketing wheel with the 3Cs. So we have step 1, step 2, step 3. So actually, before I go to step 1, what I'm going to do is actually point out the mistake that business owners make, because this is how this brand marketing wheel actually came about. They go straight to step 3, which is communicate, and that's promote and grow, because it's like, right, I've got business, I need to make money, I want to sell, and let me promote and grow it, let me do the
Yep.
marketing so I can get sales, so I can get money.
Yep.
And sometimes there's a bit of a desperation energy or a lack energy that comes with that, especially when you haven't identified who it is you actually want to, who you've created this particular product or service and who it's
Yeah.
going to best serve. So therefore, it's just a bit of anything to everyone, and let me just try and get it out there and, try and get, cash flow in and that kind of thing. Whereas what really you want to do is start from step 1, which is clarify. That's the discover and define piece. First and foremost, you need to discover and define, who are you as a brand? What do you
Nice.
want to be known for? What is your ethos? What are your non-negotiables? What are your, those values that really, really drive you and how you do things, what your principles are? What's that brand personality? What's your vibe and energy like, and making sure it's consistent across everything that you do. And then also looking at the external pieces of, well, what's your tone of voice, your positioning, what are your key strengths, those USPs, that distinctive edge that you bring to the table that others cannot maybe get from your competitors, because we've got to know that we are up against potentially other companies, people, that kind of thing, right? Very, very importantly, we need to know who we're serving. This is an exercise a lot of people skip, or they do it very surface level. Who's the audiences that you want to work with, and not to put everybody into one generic audience. Some of us have businesses that serves different audiences. Just to give you an example, I work with medium-sized businesses. My content and messaging is going to be very different to them than my solopreneur business owners.
Yep.
Needs to land, and we need to know first and foremost as a business, what is it that we can best do for them, and how do we know, who are they, so we can actually communicate to them.
It's interesting. I heard a great analogy by someone that was on the podcast a little while ago, and it's very apt because there's people don't understand who they're serving, and they don't go deep. Is exactly what you said. I want to give a lovely little analogy, because the best description I've ever heard of that is this: two gentlemen, both 75 years old, and both live in a castle. You would expect that you would serve them in the same way, because they're both male, they both live in a castle, and they're both 75 years old. Who are they? One is King Charles. The other, rest his soul, was Ozzy Osbourne. Both of those you're going to market to and have very different customer profiles. But ultimately, at the top level, 75 years old, male, lives in a castle, you'd think, well, there can't be too many people down from there, can there? Actually, I think it's really powerful about the superficial. Who are they? What do they like? Where are they going? Where do they sit? Who do they sit with?
Yeah, 100%. Because that will then come into step 2, which is create, design, and develop. Because now all of that information that's come out of Clarify, it now gives you a real insight to go and actually design your visual identity, because you want to create a certain look, feel, style, energy about your brand through branding. You're now, creating, you've now got an overall brand narrative that represents the overall brand and business. But now you can also get honed into the actual messaging and storytelling, just like you just did there. You did a bit of storytelling.
Yep.
Now you can do that because, all right, I want to serve these people. What kind of stories, what kind of messages is going to, serve them? Also, what kind of products and services is going to be of value or beneficial to them, that, that solves a problem. And now you can create, whether that's the signature program, whether that's a 90-minute masterclass, all of those kind of things that attracts those kind of audiences. Yeah. That will then.
Interestingly, when you talk about so Rolls-Royce and Lamborghini, like Lamborghini is famous for saying, we don't advertise on TV because our clients don't watch the TV, and Rolls-Royce doesn't sell their cars at trade shows, or like where the average person sells their car. They sell their cars at private jet hangars. It's positioning.
Exactly. So that's what we consider positioning, because if they go to a certain place and their audience on there, it's a waste of time, money, energy, resources, and we know how precious we are and how precious time is. So why not do the insights exercises in this work, so then you can save your precious time and get really focused.
Yes.
Right.
Nice. Okay. So we've clarified to discover and define.
Yes.
We've created by designing and developing.
Yes. And now we go into communicate. Now you can say, right, okay, that particular ICP or audience profile is hanging out on LinkedIn. This is the kind of thing that they actually need to hear, read, create those touch points where it's like, okay, they might need to do this quiz, or this is the kind of lead magnet that will help them to want to ultimately to set up an inquiry call with us. Ultimately, that's where we want to get them to, right? Inquiry call or purchase.
Yep.
So now you're creating content or events or collaborations or partnerships or whatever that is in creation that actually speaks to that audience. And you can now go in confidently and with conviction communicate to them in a way where you're just like, oh, yeah, they feel like, oh, this person's just talking to me. It feels like they know me. That's
Yep.
because you've taken the time to get to know them.
Yeah, nice. I love that. I think that's really simple, because I think you're right. Everyone goes straight to communicate. It's how am I going to sell my stuff? Ultimately, that's it. I need to sell something, create some content, put it out, or put an email script together, or whatever. It doesn't matter, right? Just sell. Like
Yeah,
communicate, sell.
yeah,
But and funnel. And I'd put that into a funnel. Communicate for me is about how you build the right funnel for the right ICP. He talks about
yeah,
ICP,
yeah.
ideal client profile. So I get that, but I think you're right. That step back of clarifying exactly who the ICP is,
Yeah, yeah.
then design and develop the right materials, the right information for those individuals is really powerful. What are the typical business owners? Talk about clarify. What's the number one thing they should think about when they're looking at clarify?
Because obviously this is part of my process, and I've got a brand maximizer framework which has 10 elements that make a brand. So I
Wow.
cannot just say to you, it's just this one thing. You do this one thing and everything else is sorted. It's not, because if I just say to you, just go and sort your ethos out,
Yeah.
but you're not going to work on your audience profile,
Yes.
it's not going to be as powerful. Having them both, is powerful. Having the positioning in place, having like I said, the tone of voice and the whole narrative, everything plays a part,
Yeah.
in that sense.
Under clarify, don't underestimate this piece. There's 10 parts that make up clarify that you've got to get right. It's not about a quick dash and a quick splash of color in your logo. It's much deeper than that. It's about really clarifying that whole message, to discover and define that stuff. And presumably in create and communicate, there's 10 more in each of those as well. Like to
Not
really
necessarily, not necessarily for create and communicate, there's 10 more, because the clarify piece gives you what it is then you need to create. So this is the beauty of it, because some business owners I've seen will be like, right, I need to have 20 touch points, 5 funnels, 50 nurturing, emails, and blah blah blah. Actually, maybe you don't. If you're looking for really high ticket clients who are already time poor, and then you're bombarding them with 50, it's really understanding, so you can create, reverse engineer, in that sense. And really, ultimately, as we know what business is about and where do people buy from, it's trust, right?
Yep.
So all of these steps, what they are actually doing, what I like to call, is transference of trust.
Nice.
Because people who come across you will be like, first time seeing you, they're not going to come and buy from you straight away. And then they're going to see you, maybe, they've seen you at a networking event, and then they've connected with you on LinkedIn, and then they've seen some of your content, then they invite you onto your podcast, kind of, so there's all this transference of trust going on.
Yes.
And then it comes to inquiry call, or come and speak on my stage, or something along those kind of lines. Sometimes that transference of trust starts at 70% because somebody's given a referral, somebody you've already worked with, and they're like, oh, you must work with Andy, he's brilliant, this is what he did for me. So now the person is interested, they've already got 70% transference of trust, and now it's just that call with you to see, like, okay, just tell me a bit more about what you do, because I'm already sold on you.
That the BIS talks about the funnels. Typically, when we're looking to acquire a business, one of the things we go in and look at is what's your customer acquisition. And when you start looking at their customer acquisition, essentially their funnels, they've got stuff going everywhere. It's a bit like spread betting. They've got stuff everywhere, and it's not really going anywhere. Right? And I have this philosophy of one funnel. What's the one funnel that's going to actually drive new business into your company? Get that working first. And all the things you've just talked about are exactly why we do that, because most business owners are just doing like, oh, we've got to do all this stuff. But people don't even know what the one funnel is, because most ideal clients only need one funnel. They only need one form. They're either hanging around at events. Let's take Rolls-Royce. They get their clients at private jet events, right? That's their funnel. They go to a private jet. They put a car there. They take them for a whiz down the runway. I don't know, because I haven't done a huge amount of it, right? Take them for a whiz down the runway, and they're like, yeah, I'll have one of these, right? That's their funnel. They don't have loads of, I mean, when was the last time you saw an advert in a newspaper or something like that for a Rolls-Royce? You haven't.
Yeah. And this is that piece about brand.
Yeah.
Because it's that association to, we know what the brand stands for. And as a result of that, for people who are buying that Rolls-Royce or jet, it's giving them status. It's the identity of who they get to become.
Yeah.
Because they buy that car, because they wear that watch.
Yeah.
So that is also the power of brand before even branding.
Yes. Because it's that lifestyle. You're buying into that lifestyle. That's what you're trying to get to, right? Most people are trying to buy that emotion somewhere for something.
And that's what I was
different business have. Yeah. I mean, if you're trying to buy a widget online, it's not always the same thing, but for most people, when they're selling something, they're selling a lifestyle of some sort.
Yeah, and when you really layer into that, it's a feeling one is after.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, look, that's been mind-blowing. There's been some amazing things in it. I love the clarify, create, communicate. I think for me that's really, really simple. I love the idea of, let's get the clarification piece first. Let's get that done first, because everyone's spread betting in communication. They've forgotten about the clarify stage. I love that. If people want to learn more about that, they want to go deeper, they want to know about these 10 steps inside clarify, how are they going to do that? What's the best way to reach out to you?
Just either get in touch with me via LinkedIn, Aarti Parmar, website aartiparmar.com. That will be the two key touch points. I am on Instagram as well as Aarti Parmar. LinkedIn is my main channel in that sense.
There will be a link in the comments or wherever you're listening to this. But for those that aren't, Aarti, just spell it, because they might not spell it exactly how it's said, if that makes sense.
Yes. So Aarti is AARTI, Parmar, PARMAR. I'm glad you asked me to spell it, because often people are PALMER, but it's PARMAR.
Exactly. Nice. Amazing. Well, thank you very much for being a guest. Thank you for spending your time. It's amazing to learn a bit about how you came up with that and what you're doing in the real life and the impact that's having on brands and everything else. So thank you very much for your time. If you're interested to learn more, reach out.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Have a great day. That was another Business Insider Secrets podcast, and we'll see you on the next episode.